I've often mentioned over the years that this system is so well designed, and this is not defeatist, by the way. Some people occasionally write in and say, oh, that's defeatist, and you don't give us hope. Well, I do, if you understand what I'm saying, because I'm telling you, it's a much bigger system. If you want to know your enemy, you got to know your enemy, find out about your enemy. And it's not what the media points you at that day. It never is. And this is a system that's been on the go for well over 100 years, and is escalating now. And I liken it to being a gopher. That's what each one of us, we're a gopher in a hole. And when you stick your head up the hole, one day you hear this thundering behind you, and you look, and there's a little dot on the horizon. Before you know it, it's stampeded over your head in a flash. And when you recover, you look up and it's disappearing on the horizon. And just when it's gone, there's something else coming back from the start again. There's another layer and layer or level, if you like, of this new world order just stampeding over your head, because and it has already altered society, all of society. You understand, if you want something to be a certain way, you're setting yourself in an era. I like to think to go back to the 50s or the 60s or the 70s and so on. And I keep saying you can't, because the same crooks ran the countries back then. The same crooks, same central bankers in every country. And you see that this system also changes all of the cultures on the way, demolishing the family. That was a plank of the manifesto. It's been pretty well done. And many other things too, rights of the child, which take all the rights from the parent or parents if they have to, and many, many more things. So you have to know what your enemy is in the first place, and then you have to have a moral stance on something. If you can't have a moral stance, then indignation alone isn't going to win the day. You've got to have a moral stance, and then you have got to have a common morality with other people before you can even form a group. Because otherwise you'll all be at each other's throats with different points of view. So realism is far better than fake optimism. And there's lots of fake optimism there. Remember, we're getting played big time, and I've read the articles by Sunstein and others, and these are your mind managers, basically. They're on the boards of all governments across the world. They manage your minds. And they have a whole process set up there, how to sway people. And it's so easy today with television and the internet too, that we all get our dose of indoctrination one way or another, no matter what you look at. It's built that way. It's built into everything that you watch or look at. So you have to realize that your minds are all being basically swayed for you. You're being prompted into this direction and that direction. And you're not in charge of yourself when that's happening. Remember that the mind has no firewall. So everyone's been brought up to, and each generation too, the beauty that they understood even before the communist revolution or the Bolshevik revolution in Russia was that through the techniques which they already understood perfectly well, they could indoctrinate children very quickly and different levels or ages of children very quickly, and they would overtake the adults, and eventually adults would die off, and then would come the new ones thinking, oh, things were all quite normal. You can make generations of people think that anything is quite normal, anything at all. And that's just reality too. And I don't ever put my faith in one person like a politician. Can't be done. Can't be done. Because you see, you have to participate in freeing yourselves. No one's going to do it for you, but everyone looks for a leader, you see. They all look for a leader, and then they hope that leader's going to do everything for them while they sit in their asses, basically, and fiddle with the internet and play themselves. They want someone else to do it for them. And true change can only happen with deep involvement. And when you go into deep involvement, it's like the church. You don't leave your head at the door or your brain at the door. You got to know what you're involved in. You don't get carried away by a crowd with a policy. You got to think it through, all of it through, and see what their mandate happens to be. Because they generally end up working for the other side. So go through their whole mandate and see there's one little thing at the end that you don't understand. That's the part you see that will sway everybody off into another direction. And I've often said to people, what part of history do you want to go back to? You see, the world's already global. You've got to understand that. It was especially when they signed the documentation agreement, the Charter of the United Nations, every politician and representative of supposedly their country signed away your rights as a nation. into the United Nations. They were to keep it quiet for a while. At first, actually, they hoped the people would be so shell-shocked after World War II that they'd all give up willingly their sovereignty. But it didn't work out that way, so they kept quiet about it. But they worked steadily towards it. My whole life long, I've looked at countries signing more documentation, more treaties with the United Nations, more and more binding treaties, as they call them. And I've never ever heard one politician ever stand up and say that to save our sovereignty, we have to basically tear this lot up and put it in the furnace and burn it all. Because you can't be both. That's too schizophrenic. You've got to either have a nation which you have a say in, or you have no nation at all, when people across the world have as much say in your particular area as you do. And that's what globalism is. Never mind all of the government itself isn't yours anymore anyway. It's public-private. Understand that. They're all working with the private sector, hand in glove, and many of them will swap politics into the private sector, working with government and vice versa. It's been that for a long time. And I can't see any politician making a law either to forbid that from happening, because politicians are technically psychopaths. Ordinary folk don't want power over other people. They don't have a craving to get up there in politics and get all the praises and the decorations that they get and awards that they get and fake doctorates that are all awarded and have everyone kowtow to them. Most folk don't want that. But the psychopaths crave that. So that's why they get up there. Ordinary folk actually would be set up, if they could even get in, which is highly unlikely, but getting in itself. Look at the money it takes to get in from corporations. In other words, the politician is just the man for the lobbyists to meet. He's bought and paid for by the guys that get him in. That's what he is. Otherwise, you would need all that cash to run. So, you've got to be realistic about so many things before you can change anything. And you've got to start changing with yourself. Now, what happens generally is when someone arises with the answers, as you think, the one, it's like the movies. Most American movies are dealt with the one. There's even movies called The One, and within it, that there's lots of movies that use the one that arises out of the masses to clean up town like Clint Eastwood did, and so many other movies to the sci-fis of modern times. There's always the one. You see, that means that no one else is going to get off their ass and do anything. And everyone's just quite happy to let that happen. And then there's just a point when it doesn't happen in reality. It doesn't happen that way. Because there's a lot at stake here. This is not a movie. This is not a movie. This is real life. And I mean life, blood, sweat, and tears, and suffering. This is real life. And people who want to change the system have to dedicate themselves to the changes they want and not be compromised along the way by people who are trained to run rings around you with their training and sway you off in the other directions. Lots of your tax money goes to organizations that do just that. They sway you quite easily. They know all the psychological tricks. They're trained and never feel subservient to anybody. That's the trick as well. Because once you do, or that person's really bright and brainy, you're done for. You've just given in actually. And you'll be a useful fool or tool. And that's the whole key to everything. Everyone is waiting for someone else to do it for them. A person who sets them up with the answers has two options, and this is taught in university. If you set yourself up as someone with the answers, and lots of people follow you because they're so disillusioned or terrified or whatever, that person who you're following has two options. And they always go two options. One is to lead a revolution and be a martyr and be forgotten. And the other one is to become a guru and go off into the spiritual side, which is safer. That's happened down through history. And so they give you the way out being the spiritual side. And it's new agey, it's all of that stuff combined, and they can prattle on forever and sell lots of books on it. And people like to hear that. Oh, it doesn't matter how bad the world is, I'll be okay because I'm going to find my power animal and I'm going to escape this, or I'm going to jump into another dimension. That was a big one with the New Agers. No kidding. No kidding. So this is all mind control, you understand, and it's all organized by those at the top. So rather than look for someone who's either going to get bumped off for saying the right things, becoming too popular, or else take the way of a Messiah, you have to be your own champion. I've said this so many times, and it's the only way you're going to do it. And that means sticking your head up too, by the way. People who want the one to come along and do all for them never stick their head up at all. Or they'll do when it's safe, or it's a party thing where you can boo people and gather in crowds and boo and all that and yell at them. That's nothing, no. I'm talking about really sticking your head up, because you will be noticed. And that's how you change things. And you might not live to see the changes. Remember, this is a system that's taken hundreds of years with a philosophy, with its own tenets, with its own goals, philosophy, everything, which is running the world. And that means everything that ever was has to be completely turned upside down. And you've been living through a good part of it, remember. You've got to remember all the changes that have happened in your lives, in society. And it's still going on. It's rampaging ahead, because they've got quite a long ways to go just yet. But they're almost there. So be your own champion. Back with more after this break.